How to make a woman think about you non-stop. So there's one invisible factor that determines whether a woman moves on from you quickly or whether she finds herself lying in bed, replaying your texts, wondering what you meant, checking your socials at 1 a.m. Because the biggest obstacle for moving things forward with a woman isn't how much fun she has with you. It isn't even how much she likes you. It's how much hold you have over her attention. So one of the misunderstood things in the entire love and attraction world is this. A woman doesn't fall in love with you when she's with you. She falls in love with you when she's away from you, thinking about you, which means if she's not thinking about you, you're never going to move the relationship forward. Most guys never learn how to create this effect, but once you do, it changes everything. Because here's a big secret that is also true. If you can get a woman thinking about you when you're not around, you can make her fall in love with you. Hi, I'm Bobby Rio, and I've been coaching men and dating and attraction for over 15 years now. And early on, I kept noticing the same frustrating pattern. Guys were doing everything right. The conversation was good. The dates went well. She laughs, she flirts, there's chemistry. And then she goes cold or flakes or says something like, I just don't feel the spark. So I started digging deeper, and I spent months combing through text threads of guys. I would replay their dates with them and look for commonalities. I would do coaching calls, and I would do interviews with women and reverse engineering every situation where a woman became obsessed with a guy versus where she either forgot about him or just never had that feeling where she was chasing after him. And what I discovered became the foundation of the system that I teach called the Scrambler, which is our system for flipping the script. So you're the one in her head who she's hoping is going to call or text, the guy who has complete control of her attention. And in this video, I'm going to break down 5 of the biggest triggers that make a woman think about you long after the date ends. So a lot of guys know they're in a battle for a woman's attention. It's obvious, right? You know she's got a million options nowadays. You know that she is one swipe away from another guy, one text away from another guy, trying to get into her mind. But the problem is most guys are fighting this battle the wrong way. They think the answer is more dates, more texts, more jokes, more checking in. But that flood of effort doesn't pull her in. It actually has the opposite effect, and it actually pushes you out of her mind because it's not the quantity of your communication. Too much communication very often backfires if you're not hitting certain triggers that cause her to think about you, to obsess over you. So let's get into them. Let's go through these 5 triggers, and I'm going to give you the first one now. Make yourself sticky. So the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of stickiness, of making yourself sticky. And what do I mean by that is, how do you make yourself hard to forget? Because the truth is, most women go on a lot of dates and they begin to blend together. Dinner, drinks, coffee shop, nice guy small talk, maybe a few laughs, and then poof, you're gone from her mind the second she gets home. So the question becomes, how do you create an experience or even just a vibe that sticks in her head? It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to feel different. Think about it like this. Which guy do you think she's going to remember more? The one who takes her to the same coffee shop she's been to 100 times with 100 guys, or the guy who maybe takes her to a gun range, teaches her how to hold a Glock, and has her laughing the whole time? One feels like every other guy. The other feels like the start of a story, right? The start of a romantic comedy. That same idea applies to literally everything. Your dates, your texts, your conversation. My friend Rob is Rob Judge. He's a master at this over text, where if you read Rob's texts to women, they don't sound like anyone else. You're never going to confuse Rob's text with another guy because his texts are like playful, they're vivid, they're weirdly specific. He uses his own sort of style of language. If you've ever read Magnetic Messaging, which Rob wrote on texting, you can kind of see his unique way of texting. And I remember one where he texted a woman, it's stormy outside. I wish you were here to cuddle under a fluffy blanket and watch a Rambo movie. Okay? She hasn't gotten that text from anybody else. What do most guys write? Wish you were here, hey, but like There's not many guys writing, "It's stormy outside, wish you were here to cuddle under a fluffy blanket and watch a Rambo movie." That's memorable, right? She hasn't gotten that. She's not getting it. That's what stickiness looks like. It can be other things. I remember on a date once, I was talking about psychology, something that I'm super into. And I showed this girl a quick little trick to tell if somebody's lying to you based on your eye movement. Now, I didn't go into professor mode. I just kind of slipped into the conversation. We had a little fun. We played a little game where I was like, all right, am I lying? Am I telling the truth? And she would look at my eyes. Well, a few days later, she texts me, "Oh my God, I used that eye thing that you showed me and I caught my friend totally lying." Well, now I'm a part of her reality. She's using something that I taught her and I'm living in her brain rent-free. And that's the goal. So like, taking her to an interesting place, like I said, a gun range, a toy shop, just something unique. And not just bringing her there and being a boring guy, but creating an experience out of it. Teaching her things. I remember this, a woman actually did this to me, this girl, Grace, that I had met at a party, and she was like reading my palm and telling me stuff about, and then I was like later like remembering her because it was such a unique first interaction with a woman. So anything where you're giving her an experience, you're teaching her something, but not just teaching her like a boring topic, teaching her in an experienced way, right? My IQ thing was like a little game I was playing with her. Now, here's the mindset you want to have. Take things that you're into, your personality, your sense of humor, your weird little interests, and turn the volume up just enough that she feels like she's entering a new world when she's with you. Because when you create a world that's even slightly more interesting or novel or vivid than the everyday experience that she's used to, well, she doesn't forget you. You stick. But that's just one of the triggers. And this next one is really, really important because even if you do the first one right, if you do this one wrong, she'll still forget about you. So the second thing to keep in mind is you cannot be a sure thing. So you can't come off as the guy she knows you has. You can't be, I call it an easy catch. When a woman feels like she already got you, there's no tension, there's no mystery, and there's no chase. She's like, I've got him. I can breathe. Well, that anticipation ends and that uncertainty ends, so does a large part of her attraction. Because now, when she goes home, she doesn't have to think about you. So if you go on a date and she leaves knowing exactly where you stand, exactly how into her you are, and exactly when you're going to text her next and what that text is going to say, I can guarantee she is not thinking about you. There's nothing left to even wonder about at that point, right? She already knows how the movie's going to end. You always want to leave just enough uncertainty that she's replaying the interaction in her head. You want her trying to figure out your deal. She can know you like her, but she can't know exactly how much you like her, where you stand. Do you already know? Does she already know you want to be her boyfriend? Does she already know you're thinking about a future with her? You need to leave. That's enjoyable for her, right? It's enjoyable for her to sit around and have that butterfly of, what is he thinking? Oh my God, is he thinking about me? But if you're texting her and checking in all the time, well, she knows you're thinking about her and it kind of eliminates some of the butterflies. So let me give you an example of how subtle this can be. So one of my clients told me about a date that he went on that went really well, great conversation, good vibe, flirting, everything. At the end of the date, she says, this was fun, we should do it again. Now, most guys, if they're into the girl, are going to jump right in. Definitely, what are you doing this weekend? What are your plans Sunday? But he smiles and says, yeah, I had a good time too. Let's see what the week brings, right? Let's see what the week brings. And he gives her a little wink, let's see what the week brings, walks off. She texts him the next morning with what did that mean? And what are those emojis with the sweating thing? You're, whatever it means, you got me thinking, right? And that's what you want. You got to avoid locking yourself in as the guy who's already making future vacation plans with her after a couple good dates. Nice guys do that all the time. They try to lock her in too soon. They want certainty, so they overshare, they overplan, they overpromise. But the guys who create obsession, they're a little harder to read. It's all about having just enough of a question mark that she has to fill in some of the blanks herself. And that's what gets you stuck in her head. Now, if you're like, Bobby, I don't want to play games. I hate this stuff. I don't want to play games. You have to reframe this way of thinking, okay? You have to reframe it. Stop thinking about it as games. Stop thinking, I'm playing games. This is immature. Think of it as you're creating a story that she wants. So if you watch a romantic comedy, for instance, the romantic comedy is a story that unfolds. Characters meet, there's tension, there's attraction, but there's obstacles, and there's the will he or won't he call. There's all these elements that make it a good movie. Well, if you think of it like that, and you think of you and her's courtship, you and her's beginning, it should make a good movie. Right? A romantic comedy is never the guy meets the girl, falls in love immediately, she falls in love immediately. There's the dance, right? And that's part of the story. For her, part of the story of you and her together is the uncertainty about where she stands. Is that, I call it romantic tension. She likes it. That's what draws her in and keeps her thinking about you. That's programmed into how she falls in love. So if it's not there, she's not going to fall in love. Now, this all relates to the next one, which is number 3. So very simply, be less predictable. Another way to make a woman think about you nonstop is to just be less predictable. Now, this is something that Rob and I drill into guys in our Scrambler seminar, because most men think being unpredictable is just take longer to respond to her texts. And yeah, sure, that's part of it. But it goes way deeper than that. It's really about breaking expectations. So I had a client recently who was in that early phase of dating with a woman, and every night they had this little routine where they send each other good night texts. Good night, smiley face, and it was like, if you asked a girl if she liked it, she would say, oh, it's so cute, and it's just, but the problem is, anytime something becomes a routine, and you fall into that routine too soon, you're eliminating the phase with all that romantic tension, okay? So that's why you want to avoid this. So how do you do it? Well, I told him that this routine is the problem. It's making you predictable. She's starting to expect it, which means she takes it for granted, which means when she does get that good night text, she's not getting that same dopamine hit that she used to get. Now it's just routine, which means there's nothing for her to think about. So I said, don't send it tonight. And he didn't. And guess what? The next morning she texts him, you fall asleep early last night, with a sad face. Boom. She noticed, she wondered, she thought about him. And I want to tell you something here is that a lot of guys think, if they disappoint her, oh, she got a sad face, I upset her. Listen, her being upset, her being disappointed, her being frustrated, it's all part of the story. Think about, again, I keep saying romantic comedy. In a romantic comedy, there's always that frustration. There is disappointment. There is upsetness. That's the story of falling in love. And that's what keeps her thinking about you. When you don't text, she notices, she wonders. Now he's on her mind as she's falling asleep. That's how this works. When you break a pattern, even in a small way, you create a gap, a little spike of uncertainty. And in that gap, her imagination fills the void. She starts wondering, why didn't I get the good night text? Is he out? Did I say something wrong? Is he losing interest? Is there somebody else in the picture? Now, instead of you stalking her social media, rereading her texts, she's the one doing it, trying to figure you out, looking at your Instagram to see, was he out with somebody last night? And whenever she's doing that, whenever the wheels are turning, attraction is getting more and more invested, right? She's thinking about you, which is making her more invested. This doesn't just apply to texting, though. Let's say you're on an actual date with her, and the vibe is flirty, and she's teasing you, and she's expecting you to play along, but instead of giving her the same playful banter back, you suddenly pause, look her dead in the eyes, and say, I like that you challenge me. Most women don't. And then just change the subject. That's unpredictable. She doesn't know what that meant. She's kind of confused, and that sticks because it flips the energy. It makes her wonder what you meant. And it adds a little depth and contrast. Was he serious? Was he not serious? Little moments like that where you zig instead of zag make her realize she doesn't quite have you figured out. And that's when she starts, who is this guy, right? You're no longer the cardboard cutout nice guy. You're a little bit unique. And she's trying to decode you. And that's the power of unpredictability. So here's the move. Start paying attention to what she expects you to do. And then once in a while, not every time, once in a while, don't give it to her. Don't confirm the routine. Don't explain it. Don't overdo it. Just enough to make her feel it. Number 4, create open loops. So piggybacking off unpredictability, another way to stay on her mind is by learning how to use these things I call open loops. And what I mean by that is you don't need to explain everything. Very simple. Most guys feel this pressure to over-clarify themselves. They want to make sure a woman knows exactly what they meant, exactly how they're feeling. Or they feel the need to reveal personal things like why their last relationship ended, who they are, who are you hanging out with this weekend, what do you want to do with your life. All of these things, imagine you're an onion, and these are layers to your onion. And you want to slowly peel them back so she's slowly getting to know you more. The problem is when she knows everything right away, again, she stops thinking about you. So an open loop is when you leave just enough unsaid that her mind starts filling in the blanks. This creates a little mental itch that she can't quite scratch. Now, that doesn't mean being vague just to be mysterious. One of the best open loops you can create is when something contradicts an image of you she has in her head. Okay, I'll give you a real life example of this. So years ago, I had just started seeing this girl, Nicole. Now, I'm a pretty laid back guy, right? I'm mellow. I have very sort of easy energy to me. I'm not a alpha outbursting kind of guy. You can probably tell, right? That's how she saw me. Well, the night before one of our early dates, when we were getting to know each other, I got into a fight, like a legit fist fight. I ended up with a bruised eye, a swollen cheek. I was beat up pretty bad. So the next day, where we were supposed to hang out, and I texted her saying I wasn't feeling great. Hey, can we reschedule? I didn't mention the fight. She's just like, oh, I'm in the neighborhood. And she wanted to bring me cookies and, whatever. So she wants to come by, and I'm just like, all right, you know what? Come by. She shows up, and she sees my face. So she obviously asks what happened, what happened? So I just shrug, and I go, I got into something, it's not really worth getting into. And I left it at that. I didn't explain it. I didn't tell her every detail. I didn't tell her, who the guy was and what happened. I let it be this thing that she knows happened to me, but she doesn't know why, where, what. She just kind of knows I got in a fight and I didn't want to talk about it. And I left it at that. And that moment stuck with her because for months, literally, we dated for another, 5 or 6 months. And she kept bringing it up. So, who was that fight? Tell me about what happened that night. I still can't picture you punching somebody. It's so weird. It bugged her out because it did not fit the image that she had of me. It opened a loop in her mind, one that kept me interesting. It made me three-dimensional, if that makes sense, right? I wasn't just this one-dimensional guy. I had this other side of me that made me sort of multiple layers to me, and it made me unpredictable, and it made her curious, and that's the key here. If a woman feels like she's got you 100% figured out, she doesn't need to think about you when you're not around. She's like, all right, if I was just mellow, easygoing Bobby, maybe she still would have liked me, probably, but I can guarantee that that side of me that she knew existed, that she was like, this doesn't make sense, draw her in. If you ever had a situation with a woman, right, I had the same thing where I was dating, the opposite side. I'll tell you in a second, but it's like if you introduce a hint of contradiction, just enough to spark a question, she starts turning it over in her head, and it doesn't have to be getting in a fight. There's tons of little ways to drop contradictions and open loops that make her rethink the image she has of you. So here's some other examples that you can do. So let's say you're super polished, you're a well-spoken guy, and then she finds out that you used to throw warehouse raves in your 20s that got shut down by the cops. Okay, it's a new side of you. You're not bragging about it, but you're letting it slip out. Boom, she's thinking about you. If you're the introverted type, like I am, Maybe you mention that you do stand-up comedy for a year just to get over your fear of public speaking. Again, it's a contradiction. It's, whoa, I never have thought that about this guy. Now, these have to be true, right? I'm not telling you to just make stuff up just to do it out there. It's like things that are actually true, bring them up without explaining them, because that contradiction rewires her mental file that she has on you. These kind of moments get lodged in her brain because they don't add up. And when something does not add up, we can't stop thinking about it. And that's what makes them sticky. So here's an example of how this happened to me in reverse years ago, the situation that I was just about to tell you about. So I had been dating this girl, very sweet, just kind of seemed like a nice girl. I actually was thinking, this girl's kind of a little too plain, vanilla, and boring. Well, I found her Twitter profile, and she was super into conspiracy theories, and had this insane take on different political things, arguing with people. And then she had a blog, and I clicked over and I started reading her blog where she had timelines of different conspiracies. And suddenly I was like, this is kind of interesting. I would not have expected her to be this political conspiracy girl. She never even really talked about it. But now I want to see this side of her, because previously she was kind of a boring conversation. It doesn't have to be random things about you. You can do this in even subtler ways verbally. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, if she asked you about your last relationship, you say, yeah, my last relationship, that's a story for another time. Now she's wondering, was it intense? Did you get your heart broken? Were you the bad guy? Did you cheat on her? She doesn't know. It keeps her wondering. You've planted a question without giving her the answer. Or even something like, you remind me of someone, but I'm not going to say who yet. And then just move on. That just yet creates anticipation. Now she's wondering all night, who were you thinking of? And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, she doesn't know. So one last example. I have a theory about you, but I don't want to say until I have more proof. This one works great over text too. It creates curiosity, builds tension, and it invites her to ask follow-up questions. Or even, that's one of those things I only tell girls once they've earned it. Another line like that. It's just something that gets her leaning in, gets her wanting to know more, so that she's replaying it, thinking about what you might have meant. You're giving her just enough to keep the gears turning, but never the full picture. And that mystery is what keeps you on her mind. And that also leads into our next one. So create mystery. Here's the thing you probably realize with all of these. The more mystery there is, the more she's going to think about you. Simple as that. Most guys overshare. They put everything out on the table thinking it's building connection. But when a woman knows everything about you, there's nothing left to wonder about. And it's the wondering that keeps you on her mind. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say she's scrolling through your Instagram and she sees 3 different posts. The first post is a selfie with you and your arm around a girl. The second is a group shot at a bar with your buddies. The third is a photo of a beer next to a half-drinking martini glass with a caption that says, good drinks, better company. Which one do you think is going to make her obsess a little bit that night? Number 3, the beer next to the martini or an apple-tini is even better, because now her imagination kicks in. Who's he with? Why didn't he post who he was with? Is this a date? Is he serious? Is he seeing someone? That one vague image creates a story in her head that she can't stop thinking about. Now, obviously, if you're dating this girl and you're exclusive, you're not going to do that, right? It's a little, but if you're in the early stages where you're not exclusive, you don't want to rub it in her face with you in a picture of a girl, but that other picture gets her wondering. It's also a really great one to get an ex-girlfriend jealous if you need something to do. It's a beer martini glass, cheers to a good night with good company, and let her wonder who you're with. Because mystery opens up a loop. And like we talked about earlier, the mind hates open loops. It's the same reason that cliffhangers work in a TV show. It's the same reason a woman will reread your text trying to decode what you meant. So mystery gives her something to chew on, because when she doesn't have all the answers, she has to keep running little mental simulations about you. Who are you with? What did you mean by that? Why didn't you tell me more? That's what keeps her mentally locked in even when you're not around. Now, a big part of this is mastering the art of vagueness. Not lying, not pretending to be something or someone you're not, just leaving the door cracked open enough to make her peek in, but not letting her know everything. Now, one of the easiest ways to do this is just use gender neutral terms when talking about your weekend or who you were hanging out with. Like, if she asks you, what did you do last night? Instead of saying, oh, I went to dinner with my buddy Mike, try, caught up with a friend I hadn't seen in a while. Now she's wondering, was it a guy, a girl, an ex? An interesting or sort of a benefit to this is it also allows you to do what I call a temperature check. Sometimes again, all of these are meant early on, and sometimes early on, you don't really know where you stand with a woman. So these kind of like temperature checks of being vague, they give you a chance to feel her out, because if she's into you, she's gonna go, who was it? Oh, who were you out? And she's gonna think about it, and 5 minutes later, or 10 minutes later, she's gonna go, so who were you with again last night? Who was that? And that's your way of knowing she's invested. If she doesn't care, if you're like using gender neutral pronouns and she literally does not seem to give a shit, it means she's probably not that invested in you yet. So again, and when she asks you don't need to confirm or deny anything. Just move the conversation forward naturally. So same goes for when you tell stories. If you're talking about a crazy night out, don't name drop every person involved. Say, so a couple friends of mine dragged me into this dive bar and things just got weird. Let her ask who, let her ask what happened, because now she's leaning in. So a few more ways to build mystery is, let's set, like, whatever it is, whatever she's asking you, let her ask twice. If she asks you something and you brush it off playfully, don't cave the first time. You want her to go, come on, tell me. And that second ask is where the tension's building. Again, it's when you know she's invested, if she's asking a second time. So here's the mindset. The less she knows for sure, the more she imagines. And imagination is a more powerful drug than certainty. Mystery creates that emotional tension where she's never completely sure where she stands. And this is not about doing it in a cruel way. It's just in a way that keeps you from getting boring. Again, you're making your movie and her movie, your movie together, you're making it more interesting. Because the moment you become fully understood, fully predictable, fully like the movie's over. She knows the ending. And once she knows the ending, it's like, oh, maybe I'll keep it on in the background, but I'm going to see if I can find something more interesting or someone more interesting. Now, some guys hear this and think, isn't that playing games? Again, I know I'm repeating this, but I know guys are listening. I see the comments on videos like this. Shouldn't I just be upfront? But here's the thing. This isn't manipulation. It's not deception. It's healthy boundaries. You are not obligated to give a woman your full autobiography the second you meet. You don't owe her an explanation of who you were with last night. She does not need to know everything about you. She's not your parent. She's not your school teacher. She's not the authority, right? You don't have to report in with a context of where you were, who you were with, why your last relationship ended. She's just a girl you've gone on a couple dates with, okay? Stop projecting more onto her than she is. And part of building real attraction is letting things unfold naturally with a little intrigue, a little discovery along the way. That's what makes it exciting, because when she has to fill in the blanks, when she's not totally sure who you are yet, she wants to figure you out. She starts thinking about you on her own. And that's where the obsession starts to build. So let's do a quick recap of what we've covered so far. 1, make yourself sticky. Bring her into your world, introduce her to something she doesn't get from other guys, something that lingers in her head after the date. Don't come off as a sure thing. Leave a little uncertainty. Make her wonder where she stands with you. Anticipation is powerful. Be less predictable. Break patterns occasionally. Skip the good morning text. If you know she has whatever, she tells you that she's going on a job interview, she's probably expecting you to send a good luck on the job interview text. Maybe don't send it, okay? Every other nice guy in her friend zone is probably sending that text. Be the guy not sending it. Take a surprising left turn in a conversation. Keep her guessing. Create open loops. Again, don't explain everything. Drop hints, contradictions, half reveals that stay with her. And build mystery, which really is a big part of all of this, is just enough mystery, just enough things to yourself. Use vagueness, playful misdirection, subtle tension to make yourself unforgettable. Each one of these creates what we call mental stickiness. the kind of emotional residue that makes her think about you when you're not around. And when you stack these, you're not just interesting, you're unshakable in her mind. Now, all of this is really what the Scrambler's built on, because here's what happens. When we really like a girl, we get hesitant to do this stuff. We're scared to create uncertainty. We think, if I don't let her know that I'm into her, she'll text that other guy she's talking to on Tinder. So we play it safe. We make ourselves a sure thing. We over-communicate. We try too hard to make her feel secure and special way too soon. That's the problem. And we end up doing none of the things that actually make her think about us. The Scrambler, what it does is it gives you a roadmap. It shows you exactly how to do this step by step in the right way, because you don't want to overdo it either. If you go too far, if you're too mysterious, too unpredictable, too hard to read, she's also going to write you off. She'll assume you're a player. She'll assume you're just, you're not into her. There's no chance of anything real. So what the Scrambler does is it finds that perfect balance that most guys don't know how to do. Most guys don't know that sweet spot. The Scrambler actually shows you the sweet spot where she feels just enough uncertainty to stay hooked. She's getting the right validation from you, but then you know the precise moment to withhold the validation. It also gets her wanting something more from you. It gives you a structure. Instead of guessing when to pull back, when to escalate, when to break expectations, we walk you through it phase by phase. And if you want to go deeper than just the surface level stuff we talked about here, if you want the real meat of how this works, that's why we created the Scrambler seminar. It's a 2-day training, around 12 hours, where Rob and I walk you through every phase of the process. We give you real examples, word-for-word lines, tactics that go layers and layers deeper, way deeper than just don't text her back. So if you haven't already, click the link below to check it out. I got a video walking you through it. And if this video was helpful, drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let us know what you want to see covered in the next one.